talking about all things rookies, all things NFL draft when we return.
Welcome in to the Devy Devotional Podcast, a show devoted to all things Devy and C2C. Hosted by John Arrington and Aaron Wilcox. This dynamic duo brings you actionable strategies with player-driven analysis for your Devy and C2C leagues. Let's dive in.
Let's dive in. Welcome to the Devy Devotional, where we stay devoted to Devy. I'm your host, Dynasty Coach A, joined as always by Aaron Wilcox and Andy Starr. And tonight, like I said, we are going to be talking about the NFL draft. Obviously, it's finally here. It's NFL draft week, and we are so excited. Screw Devy, screw college football, screw all of it. We were going to talk about freshman QBs. That's not important right now. NFL rookies and the NFL draft is what's important right now. And also what's important is checking in with the boys. Andy, how are you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing great, and I'm excited for the draft. This will be my second year in a row attending the NFL draft, so I actually fly out to Green Bay tomorrow. So I'm getting excited about that, and yeah, I mean it's here. Like we can finally put some teams to some names, and get our rankings finalized and start doing rookie drafts, which I think is what everyone's been longing to do since February. So this is always a fun time of the year.
Absolutely. I'm very jealous. We went to the draft together last year. It was a great time. I mean, it's going to be tough to beat Detroit, but Green Bay has already like put out some stuff and it's looking pretty good. So I am jealous that you're going this year and I'm not. Aaron is not too far. He might still decide that he wants to drive over there and meet up with you. But how are you doing tonight, Aaron?
Well, I'm doing well, and that would be amazing to go down there and visit. Unfortunately, I do have to work on Thursday, and it's not looking so good on Friday, but I am a mere 5 hours away, so it's not too bad. And be excited to be on the lookout there for some coverage of Andy. Hopefully, they'll get him on the ESPN draft coverage. They'll just have him hop on quick and give his 2 cents on the offensive prospects. Um, on one of the ESPN NFL Network, one of those. So be looking for Andy on there. But no, I'm always loving NFL draft season. It's great.
Absolutely. I don't know. We were paying for those like what $15 beers last year when we were there. It was tough. By the like we got there early. We got there what about 12 o'clock. Of course the draft doesn't start until what 8:30, whenever the hell it is. And we're paying for these like $15 beers. And finally it was like we got we got to figure out something else, guys. This is a little crazy. So we actually found a bar. We went to the bar instead.
Yeah, that's one thing that, I've took from last year's experience and we're transposing onto this year. Like we don't need to get there at 10 a.m. Like we were kind of worried like it's gonna be packed. You want to make sure you're there and be in the gate because once it fills up, you can't get in. Well, it didn't fill up till like 5 in the afternoon. So we're not gonna be waking up first thing in the morning and heading over to the draft this time. We're gonna, hang out, do our pre-gaming at the house so we're not paying $15-20 a beer, and then yeah, we'll head over there. And it does look like it's supposed to rain, which is kind of a downer, but they have beer tents and stuff, so we'll find something to do, I'm sure.
Yeah, you don't want to get there late, but you don't need to be there at 10:30, 11 o'clock either. It should be a lot of fun. I'm hoping for nice weather. I did see, unfortunately, that they're calling for rain, and I don't know if Green Bay is set up for it. Like, I don't even know how it's going to be set up. Where the stage is going to be, if it's going to be covered. I highly doubt the fans are going to be covered, but I guess we'll hope for the best. But I did see there was a decent chance of rain, and I'm definitely hoping that won't happen because that would be not as fun.
Yeah, whatever happens, we'll be there enjoying ourselves, and if it rains, we'll just have to drink more. No big deal.
No big deal. All right. Well, the NFL draft is a big deal, and obviously betting on the NFL draft is a big deal. And so that's what we're going to start out with tonight, talking about NFL draft prop bets. Let's see, we got some betting lines courtesy of DraftKings Sportsbook. And Andy, you want to run us through the? Let's see, we got starting with Ashton Genty. I've a lot of news recently going with Genty moving up boards, and so this line might not even be the same when we actually go to make this bet.
Yeah, so this isn't like your typical money line or even spread bet where, like, if you pick either side, the odds are about the same. So in the case of Genty, his draft position on the betting line is 6.5. So if you bet over that, meaning he's picked after pick 6.5, so 7 or later, you're getting 3 to 1 odds. So you'd be making a lot of money if you bet on that and Genty started to fall. Whereas if he gets picked in the top six, you have to pay $4.25 just to make $1 back. So keep that in mind with some of these. Same thing with Emeka Egbuka. His line was at 29.5, and for him to get drafted at pick 29 or earlier, the odds are two to one. So $2 or $1 gets you $2. If he gets picked after that, you would have to. I got that backwards. If he gets picked after pick 29.5, so 30 or later, you would get 2 to 1. If he gets picked before that, it's negative 275. And then the last one we're going to talk about is Jackson Dart, whose line is 24.5. So if he gets picked 24 or earlier, you would actually be making more money. That's plus 155 on the odds there. Anything after 25 is you'd have to bet $2 to make one. So minus 200. So looking into that, obviously, the betting market would tell you that Dart is probably going to get picked after pick 25. So, but those are the three that I have on here. They don't give lines for everybody. There's a few other ones that, would have fantasy football impact, but I figured these ones are kind of at least, controversial, or also in the case of Genty, high interest.
No, I definitely think they're three of the hottest names as far as risers throughout the entire draft process and really everything. I think it's very interesting to see that it seems like Ashton Genty's creeping up even more and more every week, and it's just it blows my mind. We've kind of we've kind of gotten to the point where we've accepted the fact that running backs aren't going to go early anymore, and then we get your Bijans and your Jameer Gibbs, and now we have Ashton Genty possibly going as high as 4 or 5 now, and it's kind of crazy. Let's save Dart. Let's say Dart talk because I think we can have a nice Dart conversation here in a little bit. But let's talk about Gente and Egbuka here. Aaron, do you think he's going to be over or under the 6.5? Like I said, I feel I mean, I don't want to lead the witness here or anything, but I feel like we're getting a lot of steam towards the under here.
Yes, we certainly are getting a lot of steam. Originally, I took over. I'm just thinking, it's running back, and in this day and age, even if a team within that top 6, 7 picks wanted him, maybe they could trade back a few slots, right? Pick up another second next year or something pretty valuable because we know that moving up in the draft is costly and you can move back and still get your running back. That's pretty tantalizing, but we just know how these teams sometimes blow these picks. They overinvest in a position like the running back position. We know Ashton Gianti's a stud too. I mean, I get why a team wants to build around him. And there's two teams that really seem likely. I mean, you're hearing some steam for Jacksonville and Las Vegas. I mean, you think that Pete Carroll is going to want to build around the running game. Perfect. And they don't have a guy right there right now. So it just makes sense that they're going to want to invest. And I think Gianti has a pretty good shot now of going under the 6.5. So as far as like making money goes, I don't know that you should be, you know, I guess like Andy said there's some implications, things that you have to look into if you're going to actually place that bet. But if I'm just trying to tell you what I think is going to happen, it just seems more and more likely that Gianti is going to go within the first 7 picks or first 6 picks.
Yeah, absolutely. We got Drop the Mic. What's up, buddy? Haven't seen him in a while. My bourbon buddy in Canton, Ohio. He says Genty to Jags would be wild. I agree. I mean, honestly, when they first started talking about Genty to the Raiders. I'm like, well, of course it's never going to happen, but like, yeah, of course that would be great for the Raiders, except for they have so many other needs. Why? Like, why would you ever do that? And I feel like it's almost the same with the Jags. Like, do the Jags feel a running back away? No. Do the Raiders feel a running back away? No. Like, a team like the Chiefs or somebody like that is a running back away. You say, yeah, they go get Ashton Genty, they're going to win a Super Bowl. You I don't think that the Jags getting Genty, and I guess that it really depends on how you feel about him. Do you feel like Genty is this generational talent that he's kind of made it? I just saw our good friend Felix Sharp in the chat. I'm going to show that one here in a second, but yeah, you have to decide: is Genty this generational talent, or is he not? He just keeps getting pushed up more and more and more. A year ago, no one cared about Ashton Genty. Now he's the greatest thing since Saquon Barkley, and I don't know if I can get on board. Maybe that's just me being like a curmudgeon Devy player, but it really gets hard for me to just absolutely fall in love with Genty that hard.
And it's not about what we think they should do, or what we would personally do, right? If we're running the team, it's like, what do we think they are going to do, right? Not because, like you
Right.
said, in our space, yeah, it doesn't make sense to overinvest in running back. We understand how deep this draft class is, so I think a lot of us who understand the landscape and I guess we're not trying to say that we're smarter than NFL front offices, but sometimes it seems like what are these teams doing with their draft selections, where they're taking these guys, the values and whatnot. They can reach on guys such as Janty at the running back position too early at times, even if they shouldn't.
Absolutely. Like I said, we got our good friend Felix Sharp in the chat. He says, two great guys talking ball with John. Love it. Love you, buddy. It's been a while. Where you been? Haven't seen you on streams or anything. I need my Felix fix. Felix fix. I like that. You should make a show called that. So, Andy, you haven't really touched on Genty here yet. Like, how are you feeling about him? Is he that generational talent? And I guess more importantly, over or under 6.5?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything you need to know as far as like the bet is concerned is built right into the odds that they're giving you, saying, "Listen, we're making you pay us $5 essentially to get a dollar back." And if you've been following mock drafts since like mid March, maybe even February, Genty does not fall past 6 in hardly any of them. And now we're starting to see him get pushed up into 5, like you guys were saying, going to the Jags in some situations. You're also seeing the potential of maybe the Bears making a move up to grab him in that territory. Um, it's draft day. Anything could happen. As far as generational or not, I've always been on the record as saying, he's in the same tier or maybe even behind a guy like Travion Henderson. I really like Omarion Hampton as well. I'm not sitting here saying I need to have this guy, but at the same time, if he goes in the top 10, like the hit rates of a top 10 drafted running back are, what are it's got to be like nearly 100%. Maybe like the worst situation you can come up with is like Leonard Fournette, just in recent memory. Just in the last few years, we've had Bijan Robinson. Going back, the last 9 years, you think about like Ezekiel Elliott, you think about Christian McCaffrey. The guys that get drafted that high tend to get that opportunity, and for running back, that's what you really want. You want the opportunity because that's what's going to score the points. So if he goes in the top 10, yes, I'm very interested in him, especially versus these other running backs, because once you get into the second or third round, yeah, your hit rates are still pretty good, but they're not nearly that good. So, but yeah, if you're gonna bet this, I really just don't even recommend betting it, because worst case scenario is you lose more money than you wanted to. You're probably not gonna win it if you're trying to bet the other side of this coin, and really just the risk isn't worth the juice isn't worth the squeeze if you're gonna just try and win a little bit of money.
Yeah, honestly, I think that he should go after the 6.5. I think he should be over. Man, it's just there's too much steam for me to ever make that bet though. So I think I would have to lean towards the under. But man, I really do think that like obviously the Cowboys at 12 or somebody like that like makes so much more sense to me than that. Not to say that they don't have other needs as well, but yeah, I really struggle with that one. But a player that's actually been moving up substantially recently is Emeka Egbuka. I've seen recent reports talking about how amazing he is in interviews, how much these teams actually love him as a person, as a player, as a brain, an NFL brain, NFL mind. So, not even talking about who he is on the field or who he is as a player, but just who he is off the field, who he is in these interviews. And but that matters a lot, and it seems like where he was considered uh, early to mid second going into this process, and maybe January, February, March. Now it seems like he is almost all but guaranteed to be a first round pick. And I would even go as far as to say that I think that he's going to be closer to a mid pick, like closer to 15 than he is to 30. When it's all said and done, it just seems like these teams are falling in love with them, and he could end up in one of those really ripe spots. Obviously, I have my fingers crossed for a couple landing spots for him, but we'll see what actually shakes out. But Andy, we'll start out with you with this one. Over or under pick 29 and a half. And how much do you love Ibuka?
I mean, we've been high on Egbuka for a long time, probably higher than most. He's always been in that same, no, not, Ted McMillan has always been our wide receiver one. I would say, last offseason, Emeka Egbuka was actually my wide receiver one. He's always kind of been the second guy at Ohio State, which isn't, Ohio State always spits out wide receivers like crazy. And even being the second guy, you start talking about like Chris Olave or something, you can still be a very successful NFL player. And he's had, solid seasons. He had the really solid sophomore season. And then he bounced back after a bad junior year last year to have a really good season this year as well. As far as where I think he's going to get picked, again, the betting odds are telling us it's probably going to be pick 29 or sooner. Start looking at the teams in that range. Who needs a wide receiver? It could be as high as, you look at pick 20. Denver Broncos are there. They need a wide receiver. They've just got Bo Nix, and they're probably feeling pretty good about their passing game situation moving forward. Not that they should be feeling good, but maybe they are feeling good. Uh, uh, Moving down the list, you see the Chargers, the Packers. They never draft a wide receiver in the first round or haven't, but they really don't have a game changer at that position either. And then even the Lions, they've got Jamison Williams, who's going to be on his 5th-year option here shortly. And then, they already are paying Amon-Ra St. Brown. Maybe they just want to do a little switcheroo and, you know, take take Egbuka here and let Jamison walk once his contract's up there, so they don't have to keep paying these guys more market value, I shouldn't say, but still, when you're already paying Amon-Ra St. Brown, you got to pay Aiden Hutchinson. You're already paying your or your right tackle in Penei Sewell and Jared Goff. Like at some point, they're going to have to make some decisions, and maybe wide receiver is one of those decisions that they decide to make right now when they're picking here at 28. So I do think he's going to go before that. I think the betting market there is telling us that we should be looking out for that. So I think it's going to be under 29 and a half, and it's priced at a spot where I would be comfortable putting a little bit of money on it, I think.
I think I agree with you, Aaron. How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, I think Andy summed it up well. And Devi Devotional, Devi you, like all of us have just been very complimentary of Emeka Buka as a player, as a prospect for years. And I would say, like his last 2 years, yes, maybe not quite the same level of explosiveness that we'd come to expect over his first 2 years, but at the same time, it's not like he suddenly became a bad player. I think that prime like Juju Smith Schuster, something like that could be what we're looking at there. And Juju in his prime was a very good wide receiver. Was he, the injuries really robbed him, I guess, of that prime and that production in his career. But I think at the end of the day, he could be a very, very good number two at the NFL level, a number one in the right situation for sure as well. So Mecca going within the first 29 picks, I think is I wouldn't say a lock, but I feel very confident saying that he will. So, Andy listed off a bunch of teams there. I think that there's even more teams that would be interested in locking up a wide receiver. Now, we know there's some other options within this class at the wide receiver position that could also be tossed out there in consideration in the first round. So he's definitely not the only one. He probably won't be the first one or even second one. But I think that within 29, yeah, that seems pretty safe in today's landscape. And like you said, there's some teams that really need a weapon there. This class overall at the wide receiver position, they might just need to pay up and draft their wide receiver early because it's a little different than the running back position, which is so top heavy, but also deep. The wide receiver position is not quite the same in this class.
No, I definitely agree with that. I think go get your stud wide receivers in the first round, and then worry about running back in the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, whatever. There's so many talented running backs that I feel like I wouldn't be going crazy trying to get one of the top guys unless it just fell into my lap. I'm not going out of my way. But with Igbuka, I don't know if it's just a pipe dream. I mean, obviously it's realistic, at least in my mind. But I'm just really hoping for the Chargers at 22, and I've seen that in a few spots with with him going there in a couple mocks recently and everything. But it makes so much sense. I would love to see him paired up with Justin Herbert. I think everyone thinks of Igbuka as a number two, but I really feel like he could actually be the one in that offense when it's all said and done. And I feel like he has the talent to be that guy. And I think the way that teams are falling in love with him, or at least the way that they're making it out to be, maybe he's kind of proving that as well. Like, hey guys, I can be an inside outside guy. I'm not just this slot wide receiver. I'm so much more than that. I'm that 5-star number one wide receiver recruit. Like, that's who I am, not just who I've been made out to be because I'm playing with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jeremiah Smith and everything else. I think, I'm definitely going under here with Igbuka. I think if you give me a line of like 25 or something, it'd be really difficult for me to go under. But you give me 29 and a half, I think it's pretty easy. And like I said, I'm hoping for that 22 when it's all said and done. But there's the Rams. I mean, there's quite a few other teams too that he could go to that would make a lot of sense for him, for the team, for everything. But that brings us to my baby, our baby, Jackson Dart, a third round pick as of January, according to everyone and their mother, uh, except for us. We did not think that. In fact, I posted an article that I put out January 2nd, and I said, "Hey, he's a third round pick right now, but I don't think it's going to stay that way, and we'll see what happens." And here we are. He is definitely not a third round pick anymore, or at least we're not expecting that. In fact, his over under is now at 24 and a half. We're getting steam for the Giants. We're getting steam from the Saints. We're hearing a lot of hype for Dart. Could it be misleading? Possibly. I think there's too much smoke, and I think there's definitely a fire for Dart, and I think he's definitely going in the first round. In fact, I think our good buddy Anand Enduri posted earlier. I forget the actual odds, but it was like 89% chance. There's an 89% chance that Jackson Dart goes in the first round, according to the associated odds that he has right now. So I'd say, pretty good odds right there. But Aaron, what are you thinking? Obviously, how much do you love Dart? And then is he going over or under 24 and a half?
Yeah, definitely been a fan. Continue to be a fan. Right in that tier one as far as QBs in this class. I mean, you could argue Cam Ward, but there's an argument as well for Jackson Dart, no doubt. And he's a toolsy guy. He offers some ceiling, some floor as well in the rushing game. So you like that for fantasy contributions. And just in terms of NFL intrigue, I think there's plenty of that there. I don't think it's all just smoke. And at the end of the day, 24 and a half. I think it's going to be under. Teams can certainly trade up into that slot. We know how thirsty some of these teams get for a quality quarterback. Those opportunities do not come about every year. Who knows what next year's class is going to look like? There's already some teams earlier than that 20 was that 24 and a half slot. Yeah, I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers is the one that you hear all the time, but there are certainly other options. There's no doubt. So I I think that there's enough steam and momentum there where I think it's realistic that Dart should be under. I would feel pretty good saying that as well as far as taking the under.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Honestly, we're hearing more and more about the Saints because Derek Carr's injury. We have no idea what's going on with his shoulder, but we're hearing that and once again, it obviously could be smoke. We don't always hear the truth this time of year, but we're hearing a lot of reports that the Saints like or love Dart and they like him more than Shadur Sanders, and that they would possibly take him as QB2 in the class over Shadur Sanders. Andy, how much are you believing that? And do you think there's a chance that we're not even talking about 24 and a half? We're talking about 9.5 here.
Yeah, I mean, this is one where we're actually getting plus money if we're taking the under here. And, we're going to talk about like hot takes, and this might be a bit spicy. I think it is, but with what we're hearing with Shadur Sanders about a potential draft day slide if he doesn't go in the top three, based on what we're hearing from the Saints, yeah, I think this is a guy who could definitely be QB2 off the board when it's all said and done. And Aaron touched on the way that these teams are looking to move up and draft their quarterback. It's certainly possible that he does go in the top 10 to the Saints just based on what their sentiments are and how they're feeling. You look at the other QB needy teams, aside from the Steelers, who we've already talked about, everyone else is sort of sitting right at the top of the draft. You got the Giants and the Browns and the Titans. They all could obviously, they're all going to be in the Cam Ward market. It seems like the Titans are probably going to go ahead and take him. But that's not a foregone conclusion yet either. But whatever two or three of those teams misses on their quarterback, they're going to be prime candidates to be in that trade up territory to get back into the first round. And it just becomes a matter of how much further do they want to jump in? Is it pick 24, or can they wait till a little bit after that, or do they have to move all the way up to in front of the Steelers perhaps, if they're talking about getting their quarterback there? So this is one where we're getting the positive money. We don't have to talk about how much we love Dart. He's been our QB1, or in the tier one of QBs since last offseason, really since the end of the 2023 college football season. John and I were talking like Dart is QB1. There's nobody else here. So, um, and as soon as he hit the Senior Bowl, we knew that the drive up the boards was going to happen, and it's been inevitable, and it's happening. I think this team continues to move forward, and since I'm getting plus odds, yeah, putting money on Dart to go under 24 and a half. Hoping for the Steelers, but if he goes ninth to the Saints, that's obviously a best case scenario, just as far as draft capital, and he's going to be on a decent organization going through like a bit of a rebuilding stage, but they've got weapons there to build around.
Like, guys, I'm just going to ask you all, do we have to do this next year? Last year I was told, halfway through the season or before the season that Jaden Daniels wasn't going to be a first round QB. Then even going into the draft process, I was told JJ McCarthy wasn't going to be a first round QB. He was a third round QB at best. This year we're doing Jackson Dart's a third round QB. Do we have to do this every year? Can we just can we just believe us when we say these things? Like we've been doing this for a long time. We've proven ourselves at this point. When we say he's going to be a first round QB, just believe us. Come on.
Next up, Arch Manning, right?
Arch Manning, that he's the next one. I don't think that's much of a surprise to people, but there's a couple other ones that we will be spitting out there. Maybe towards August, and definitely make sure that you're listening at that point. So that's all that we have for the actual draft position props. So as far as Dart was picked at 112. I have one draft that goes before the NFL draft, one rookie draft that happens before the NFL draft. Dart went at 112 in this draft, and a couple of people were like oohing and ahhing, like before Shadur Sanders, like they couldn't believe it. Do we think obviously this is all, it's all just hearsay at this point. But like, do we think that Jackson Dart will be considered a given ahead of Shador when it's all said and done, by the time our actual rookie draft start, what, Monday or Sunday or whenever it actually starts? Do you think that Dart going as QB2 at the very least will be the norm, or do you think he's still going to kind of get some of that hate that people love to do?
I think that he'll be going certainly ahead of Shadur Sanders because people are coming around to the realization that Shadur could, he could throw the ball a million times at Colorado. That doesn't mean he's going to be a great NFL player and a great fantasy producer as well. He's not productive on the ground with his legs. He's just not going to offer much there versus Dart. Very, very skilled at getting into the end zone in short yardage situations as a quarterback. He's not Josh Allen, but he's willing to try to score the ball from a rushing fashion. And then as a passer, it's not like he's way behind Sanders by any means either. So it's just, to me, it's very clear. I think to the masses, it will start to become more clear. And yeah, we've heard all the very positives coming out about Jackson Dart of late. People are catching on, and out of the three of us, I have to put this little plug in. We're all in a C2C league together, right? And you know which one of us three ended up drafting Jackson Dart in the draft, right?
All right, listen. I was playing the game and it did not work out for me. I really thought I could wait. I forgot who was in the draft with me. Everyone else is like, oh yeah, he could fall to like the fifth, sixth round, whatever. No, of course, Aaron takes him two picks after I take who did I take? Lenore Sellers, I think it was,
No,
or
no,
somebody.
you took Jackson Arnold. Unfortunately, I hate
Oh,
to tell you.
yeah, that's 10 times worse. Okay, yeah, I hate myself then. I almost clicked on leave studio because it was that bad. I did not mean to, but I almost did.
No, no, we've all been there, but yeah, we obviously all love Dart here.
Austin says I'm John sitting in the dark. It's because of that pick. I didn't take my baby, and now I'm punished in the dark. Now I'm working on something. I bought a green screen. I did all this stuff, and my camera does not like the green screen. So I don't know. I might have to update the camera or something. So I'm working on it, but I'm sick of people seeing my clock that doesn't work back there. So I'm sitting in the dark instead. And Hollywood says, "What up? What's up, buddy?" Appreciate you tuning in like always. And yeah, so I think that was a great talk about Dart. Um, I'm sad that I don't have him in WU. Although I do have some solid players though. Andy will not be repeating in that league. I can tell you that much.
Probably
All
not, but
right.
don't doubt what I can do in a supplemental draft. We'll see what happens.
Hey, after last year, I didn't think there was a chance of you winning last year, and I mean, you did pretty well in the supplemental. I think it was more the waivers. You got some nice waivers. You grabbed Caleb Johnson, and it was kind of over after that.
Caleb Johnson, Ty Felton, shout out Rashard Smith. Yeah.
All right, that's just mean, Austin. That's just straight up wrong. He says broken clock right more times each day than the guy sitting in front of it. I thought we were
That's
friends, man.
great.
All right. Speaking of being wrong, let's talk about these first round position totals because I think the first one is way off. It says you. Andy says I need you to double check this because this doesn't sound right at all. Total wide receivers in the first round over under 2.5. That seems like the easiest smash I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, I should caveat this because I believe DraftKings is not considering Travis Hunter as either a wide receiver or a cornerback for betting purposes because they don't know what he's going to be announced as
That's
when
fair.
the draft
Yeah.
comes. So that's why it is. But even so, over 2.5 without him being considered a wide receiver is negative 320. So you're gonna have to bet $3.20 to make a dollar. And if you do bet under, and you're saying Emeka Egbuka falls out of the first, you'd get plus 230. So that's why it's like that. So I believe that's the reason. Because yes, if Travis Hunter is considered a wide receiver, there's no chance that three don't go in the first round.
Yeah, that makes sense. And but I have a pretty strong take on it, so I'll let Aaron maybe talk me off this this cliff because I think that it would be a smash for me.
No, no, I'm pushing you off the cliff here. No, Tet, Egbuka, Golden, potentially Burden or a different dark horse coming in there. And like you said, if Travis Hunter doesn't count, that's fine. That's still over three guys or three or more guys. So at the end of the day, don't think it's that bold to say, yeah, it should be over that. Um, we we see these wide receivers even there's plenty of examples through the years of guys where you're like, oh, he went. Well, I guess he tested well, right? He was fast, this and that. Props him up in NFL's eyes. So ultimately, yes, I think you got to go over there. Um, yeah, we'll see what the odds are. I guess ultimately at the end of the day, I'm not sure, but as far as how many guys are going to go in the first, yeah, I think there's going to be three or more easily as far as the wide receivers go.
I just don't see like this seems like the easiest bet that we've had since the KC Concepcion under 8 touchdowns or whatever it was from last year. Although he did scare us in that week 1, but we still got it right.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, it's not like you're not getting that bad of odds either. Like, minus 320 isn't great, but if you want to make a quick $10, I think if you just throw down $30 and there you go. Like that, it should be a no brainer. Like Aaron already mentioned a few guys, and then there's always like a Jahan Dotson or something that all of a sudden gets drafted at like 23rd, and you're like, what? Why are we taking? Or even last year, like Xavier Leggett, you're like, what is? Why are we taking these guys in the first round? It just happens. Like
Yep.
the only time it didn't happen was that it was the N'Keal Harry year. I think him and Hollywood Brown were the only wide receivers taken in the first round that year. And other than that, like four or five seems like a lock just about in any draft. Even in this draft, which might not be as deep at wide receiver, there's still plenty of guys that are first round talents, so or can be perceived as first round talents. So yeah, I'm with you guys. I think over two and a half is pretty easy here.
And I
I think
might
it's just
throw in a spicy or hot take at some point, maybe at the end of the episode. But I think that there's another wide receiver we haven't talked about yet that could sneak into the first, just based on what I'm hearing, some things, how he's trending. But I mean, I think it's more interesting. What about 3.5? What do you guys think over under 3.5? That becomes a little bit more interesting for the first round, assuming we're not counting Travis Hunter.
yeah, obviously, we'd have to see what the odds change to with that. But I mean, assuming that we get some decent odds with that, like let's say even money or something like or close to it or something like that, then I think I'd be willing to make that bet because I'm with Andy. There's always some team that's going to do something stupid, take a Savion Williams or somebody at 32 and say, well, but look how tall he is and he's fast and it always happens. It always seems to happen. You get your Keon Coleman's and you get your Xavier Legette's, and it's just like, what are we doing here, guys? But like I know it sounds like it sounds stupid, and I'm definitely not projecting this by any means. But Dante Thornton, Andy's talked about him in the past. He's 6'5" and ran a 4.3 flat. You're telling me the NFL couldn't possibly draft him at 32 overall? Like once again, not projecting that at all. Not even saying they should. I'm just saying you don't. I'm not putting it past the NFL teams to do that because they do it every freaking year.
I'm I'm not even kidding. That was gonna be essentially my spicy take when
Oh
when
no,
we got
I'm
to that
sorry.
section for all the reasons that you just said, because everything about him screams an NFL team going, "We need to get this guy on our team." But I don't know if it's going to be first round, but I do think he's going to get way overdrafted just based on size, yards per route run, that sort of stuff. But yeah, if we're talking even money on over 3.5, I think I'd still probably try and take the over there just based on all the reasons we kind of laid out here.
What about you, Aaron? You taking it over there?
Yeah, I am, but it becomes so much closer. I mean, that's a real number versus what we were throwing out there before at 2.5. Just doesn't really seem like it's that accurate at this point. So,
No, that's what I'm saying.
yeah,
It just seems like the easiest bet to make right now. If you were going to make a bet, like like Andy said, just I mean, you're not going to make a ton of money, but go make $10. Go make $50, whatever it is. Now the running backs, on the other hand, have the same exact line, and that feels very responsible for as far as Vegas is concerned. There, I think this one is very difficult. Like it's tough. I want to believe there's going to be three. I don't know that I believe enough to actually bet it though.
I mean, at the end of the day, we have Janty, so guaranteed. And then after that, you have to say which of Travion Henderson, Quinshawn Judkins, the two Ohio State guys, Omarion Hampton, North Carolina, and then maybe some other guy trickles in. But like, I mean, those are probably the four guys that we're considering. So I don't know that we're going to get two Ohio State backs in the first. Okay, so then let's just say one of them. We're at three. Do we really think that both Travion Henderson and Omarion Hampton, a team is going to spend up to that degree within the first round for a back? And again, I can't put it past them. We've talked about it before, how sometimes they're not always the smartest in how they allocate their early round picks or their first round picks as far as NFL teams managing the draft. But man, I'm taking the under. I think one of those guys, in addition to Janty, goes in the first. But I would be more likely, again, look at the odds, but just as far as the number goes, under 2.5 for the running backs.
What were the odds, Andy?
So they're actually a little bit tighter than the wide receiver odds. Under is minus 225, so they are saying more likely two than three. But over 2.5 is only plus 170, so it's not like you're making a big bankroll if there is three. I think it seems like from what I'm seeing in mock drafts, yes, Genty obviously lock first round pick. Mock drafts seem to really like Omari and Hampton in the first round at some point, maybe around like in the 17 to 25 range. I think Travion Henderson should be a first round pick. I also think that there's a chance like a guy like Caleb Johnson, who just had a crazy season last year at Iowa, could sneak into a first round pick that a team just falls in love with him. Like, this guy's a football player. Um, Beyond that, yeah, I feel like Quinshawn Judkins is probably the next best out of those groups, the group of five, let's say in the top five, and then you start getting into like this isn't my RB6, but the NFL really likes guys like Cam Skatteboo and a few others there. I don't think those guys are first round picks in any draft, so that's probably not going to happen. Um, if I'm gonna bet it, I think I'm also going to lean under here. I just don't see enough teams really reaching towards the back of the first round to go get a running back when they know damn well they could just sit down in the second and get somebody that's as good or maybe even better than whoever they were thinking about trading up to get at that point in time, or even taking at that point in time. So I think under is probably, and that's more of a reflection of the depth of this class, because there is just so many options in the second and third and eventually the fourth and fifth rounds, where you really don't need to take a guy at the back end of the first when you can address another need.
And what were the odds again for over?
Over is plus 170, so you're almost getting 2 to 1.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, we think the wide receivers are complete lock. I think we all think there should be three running backs in the first round, but we just don't know if there actually will be three running backs in the first round. It seems like Trevion Henderson is getting a lot of steam to the Broncos recently, whether that's right or wrong, but, that's at 20. There's obviously other chances of him being drafted even after that. We could see plenty of teams, that need a running back after that. If Hampton is being considered right around the same area, or in the same, range, then I don't feel terrible about going over here. And I'm wondering if we think the wide receivers are such a lock. then maybe we take the profit that we basically know we're getting from our wide receivers and we put that into our running back bet for over at at 100 at plus 170, and then we just go for it all.
I mean, I don't hate it. I think it's certainly possible, but you're getting a little bit of incentive to bet the over. So for that reason, I can understand why you would do it. Because if with the wide receivers the way it is, there's really no incentive to bet the winning line here. But with this one being a little bit closer and it not being out of the question that Travion or perhaps Quinshawn does end up being a first round pick, I think it's not irresponsible to bet the over and just gamble a little bit.
Yeah, I'm with Andy. We're coming up on the first of the month here in a little bit. Skip this month's mortgage payment, take that money, put it into the wide receivers, and then take that winning, put it towards the running backs. Boom, you've tripled your money at that point, and you're just sitting pretty.
Honestly, like the mortgage thing is not bad advice at this time around because over 2.5 seems like a good like that's a lock, right? You could take your $2,000 mortgage and turn that into $400 or whatever it would end up being. So go for it.
There it is. We got it. Go go yeah. Just skip that payment. It's gonna be fine. Honestly, you'll have your money back before the first anyway, and you'll be perfectly fine. You heard it here first. All right, so those were the actual props, but now we have some made up props from Andy because we gotta get a little spicier here before we get into our actual spicy takes. So Andy, why don't you hit us with your made up props here?
All right, so this one is the running backs. Yet again, we're talking. I mean, this is just the running back draft class. Total running backs drafted in the first 3 rounds. So day 1 or 2 running backs, and I put the over under at 8.5. And the reason I came up with that number is because the record, or not record, but the most running backs taken in the first 3 rounds since 2010, I believe I went back that far, is 9, and that was in 2020. So essentially, if you're taking the over, you're saying this matches that draft class. If you're taking the under, there's been a handful of drafts where 8 went. 2017 is obviously the one that people probably remember that had 8. 2018 had 8, and then if you go back to like 2015 and 2014, they both had 8 as well. So 8.5. With this being what some are saying is the best running back class since 2017, can they hit that 9 running back number?
All right, I'll go first here. You know what? The original number that popped into my head was 8. You're giving us the line of 8.5, and I kind of feel like how we were talking with the wide receivers. How there's just always that one team that comes out of nowhere and takes that one guy. And it could be the 49ers. They always go out of their way to take some running back in the second or third round that they probably don't need to take in the second or third round. I really could see a Basil Tootin squeezing into the third round, even though a lot of people don't necessarily think that he should be there. But you have that kind of 4.32 speed. Some team 49ers are going to fall in love with that speed, and next thing you know, he's drafted. So I think the line you set is basically perfect. I really do. I mean, I think 8 is the much safer bet, but I think for this purpose, I will say I think there will be 9 drafted, just because I think we're going to get that one. I think 8 is a lock, and I think we're going to get that one extra player that no one's really thinking about right now, even if it's a special teamer, but he's technically a running back or whatever it is that we're not thinking about. As long as it counts, then I'm saying give me 9.
That's fair enough. And yeah, I like the line as well. I'm just going to list off some guys and kind of say what I'm confident in. Because 8.5 is that's an excellent line. And Chanty, Hampton, Trevan Henderson, Quinshawn Judkins, 4 guaranteed locks, you would think, right? After that, what we need 5 more guys. Caleb Johnson. Right now, he would seem very likely to go day 2. Scatterbo, everything that we're hearing, okay, solid chance, but it's not guaranteed. Devin Neal, same thing. RJ Harvey, there's some hype for him, but Could be a day 3 guy. Dylan Sampson, like him, but, Bashal Tuden, another good call. I just and we'll go down the list even more. DJ Giddens, Ollie Gordon, Damian Martinez, Trevor Etienne. There's gonna be such great depth on day 3. I I'm actually almost leading the under. But like John said, there's always a couple of those last picks in the third round where they just kind of sneak in a running back. They're not, maybe a guy that we don't love by any means, but like there's the Brashard Smiths of the world. There's the Jarquez Hunters, like guys who are actually sneaky good, like Raheem Sanders, Rocket Sanders, LaQuint Allen, underrated guy, and or at least like as a deeper running back in this class. So I think we could certainly get there. I'm taking the under, but I don't feel great about it. I thought it was an excellent line called out there. And just listing off those guys, I mean, there could be some fun landing spots, but they might end up being on day 3 for a couple of those guys I listed. That's for sure.
No, I like it. I love the line. Andy, this has nothing against you. I'm just trying to move us along here. So I'm going to skip this next question. Or actually, we're going to go rapid fire on this one. We're not going to give any kind of analysis. The question was drafted first, Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland? Andy, go.
I'll say Tyler Warren, but I think Colson Loveland is better and will be better in the NFL.
Aaron, what do you think?
I'll say Loveland and
Ooh.
younger, better share the offense. Think that there's just a little bit more there with him, but don't don't doubt that both of them are first round talents.
I'm going to go with Warren just because of the blocking, but I do think for our purposes, for fantasy football purposes, it will be Colston Loveland that you actually want to have on your team. Like I said, nothing against that question. We could have gone much longer on that, but I want to get into our hot takes here before we run out of time here. And so we're going to do our spiciest draft takes. We're each going to put one out there. Could be a guy rising, could be a guy falling, whatever it might be. Um, I guess I'll go ahead and start us out because like it wouldn't be a Debbie devotional slash Debbie University pod without me talking about Luther Burden. And my spicy take is going to be Luther Burden is not drafted until the third round of the NFL draft. And yes, I understand that's a spicy take. I think there is some merit to it. I think we're getting to the point where we're hearing a lot of teams are out. I've heard from a couple friends of mine that are in the know that there's some teams that just completely have Burden off their board. Now, obviously, all it takes is one team to draft them and fall in love with them. So if there's 5 teams that hate them, that doesn't really mean too much. But just the fact that we're hearing so much negativity out of Burden, we're hearing how he's a diva. I sent Aaron and Andy the route running video that that the Mizzou sent out to scouts. Like I think my 13-year-old son could actually run better routes than what Luther Burden is running. And I mean, can we talk about this? Is what I've been talking about the entire time. Dude cannot run routes, and then his own team just threw him completely under the bus. It was like, yeah, look, he can't run routes. But all that to be said, I just think there's a lot of smoke that he's falling. He was originally in the mid first round, then he was in the late first round. Now he's in the early second round. I think it's not that unbelievable that he falls to the late second, but I'm saying he will fall to the third round because teams just don't want to deal with the diva that can't run routes that has that has an 8.9 A dot or whatever the hell it is. So what do you guys think? Are we fine? Is this my final Luther Burden take, or are we finally done here?
I don't think that we're done talking about Luther Burden, no, but yeah, fair amount of spice to it. What do you think, Andy?
Yeah, and I'm also hearing like his interview scores are like generationally bad. So that's a bit subjective as well, but those are reasons why a second round pick could become a third round pick. So yeah, it's definitely spicy just based on where he's been talked about since basically his sophomore before his sophomore season. So, but it wouldn't be surprising to us.
I don't think so. Who wants to go? Andy, you're already talking. Why don't you just
Well,
continue
I had
on?
Dante Thornton.
Oh
I'll
yeah.
I'll just shoot from the hip here and say Shadur Sanders falls out of the top 10, and subsequently, I'm just gonna go ahead and this is a spicy take situation, so let's just say Shadur Sanders falls out of the first round. We'll make that as spicy as it can be. And
Dang.
I don't really have anything to like caveat that with and tell you why. I just, he seems to be a guy that, if he doesn't go in the top 3, there's not a lot of teams behind that are going to want to do anything to move up and get him. And the teams at the top of the second, probably aren't going to feel pressured to get him at the back end of the first.
Yeah, fair enough. I That was actually one of my hot takes. But I had multiple prepared, so I it's not like I only had one coming into this.
Yeah,
I think
Andy. No. Just kidding.
so. No, I'm saying that's a great call because some similar minds there as far as what could be a bold take, but still actually happen. Right? We're not just saying impossible things here. So, um, mine I'm going to go with the Matthew Golden one. He goes ahead of Tet McMillan as the
Ooh.
wide receiver one in the class. If you're not calling um, Travis Hunter, I guess, a wide receiver. So I think Matthew Golden just gets pushed up draft boards. Maybe it's not even that hot, right? He's been projected to go pretty early in the NFL draft, but still, I don't know that I consider that at least somewhat of a mild to spicy take. And if you want a hotter one and a guy that I guess I teased this earlier, but I think that there's a chance that Jaden Higgins, Iowa State wide receiver, he goes and sneaks into the back end of the first, and he goes ahead of Luther Burden, Trey Harris, Alec Amenor, and some other very talented guys in this draft class. I think that there's just something there with Jaden Higgins that NFL teams are going to like. I don't value Higgins there by any means myself, but I think that he's just going to go a little bit earlier, or at least I think that there's a chance of it. But I get there might be some spice there.
And there's definitely some spice, but at the same time, maybe it's just maybe it's the fantasy community that's like that's creating all this buzz. But there definitely seems to be so much buzz around the Higgins name, and I don't, I don't. Where was it a year ago? Because I picked him up off of waivers a year ago in my C2C league. So this was definitely newfound buzz, not not last year buzz. And that's not to say that I don't like the player as well, but first round talent, like that's where you start losing me. I do like Higgins, but I there seems to be a lot of people that are much higher on him than I, and or at the very least, like there's other players that I'm willing to take before he goes, and obviously that ends up with me not going to. I'm not going to have very much of him when it's all said and done. So I was actually thinking that earlier as well when we were talking about how many wide receivers are going to go. I think there's a chance that Higgins slips into the first round as well, and so you start thinking that way. That's what made me think the wide receivers are at over 2.5 are a complete lock because I mean, we think there's going to be at least three. I'd say there's a decent chance for 4, and I mean, really, we could get 5. So, like I don't think it would be that insane. And that's not even, Higgins isn't even like the crazy one that we're talking about, that some team just falls in love with speed or whatever else. So there's really like a decent chance that we could get 5 wide receivers in the first round. Am I banking on it? No, but I think 4 is a pretty solid number. And like, I don't think it's that spicy, especially because he just keeps rising and rising. But then again, that could just be a fantasy football thing.
Yeah, and I'll touch on the Matthew Golden, Tet McMillan one. I think you're absolutely right. Like that could certainly happen. Tet McMillan stock is kind of stagnating or even maybe downward trending the past few weeks, whereas Matthew Golden's just been on a upward trajectory since the combine. Um, the betting lines do have draft position for Matthew Golden at 17 and a half. For whatever reason, they don't have Tet McMillan's line. If you look at mock draft database, he gets picked at 12th a lot to the Cowboys. I don't know that I feel like it doesn't feel like a good fit, honestly, with Ted McMillan at the Cowboys. I can't really explain why. Maybe it's a CD Lamb thing. Like he just doesn't seem uh, like a second fiddle to anybody. He feels like he needs to be the X, like the number one
Yeah.
guy wherever he ends up. So that's why the Cowboys really I just don't like that spot. So I could see it. Teams seem to be really loving Matthew Golden. I don't personally see it for Golden, but if I'm not an NFL GM, so whatever they decide is obviously what's going to happen.
And I actually think that there's just some traction for Golden going to Dallas Cowboys at number 12. There
Mm.
just seems like there's something there. I just saw he took a picture with Jerry Jones just very recently, and I'm like, this just makes sense. Like, he's a Texas guy. He went from being at Houston to the University of Texas. Makes sense to bring him in. He's what Jerry Jones kind of likes. Like, I mean, Jerry Jones, he doesn't mind drafting a guy who's just super like oozing athleticism and kind of the trendy name. And I just think that there's big likelihood of him continuing to rise in the NFL draft, even if it's not quite warranted for Matthew Golden.
Golden fits the Cowboys as the number 2 more than Tet fits that, and there's probably some bias in there. Like, we don't want Tet to be the 2, and he definitely would be. As much as I love Tet, I'm sorry, he's the 2 compared to CD Lamb. Like, that's just, that's just how it is. But I think that Golden makes a lot of sense. I'm not a Golden fan, but I don't hate him as the number 2, for the Cowboys. Now, I would never draft him because somebody's always going to draft him ahead of me. But like that would be like one of those landing spots where I'd say, like, this actually makes a lot of sense for the team. This makes a lot of sense for everybody. I don't hate that. I still think Ted gets drafted a lot higher than people are thinking. Like, I think it's one of those things where, like, teams are kind of putting out the smoke screen and all that kind of stuff, and they're trying to act like they don't like Ted. Oh yeah, he sucks, he's terrible. We're not taking him in the first and all that, and then they take him at like 7 or whatever. I think it's going to be closer to that. I think the Jags. I know the Jags are getting a lot of steam for Genty right now, but I feel like Tet going to the Jags makes a lot of sense. Obviously, the Panthers make a lot of sense. Like, there's so many teams that he fits. The Patriots make a ton of sense. There's so many teams that need Tet. I just can't imagine that they all skip him. So I still think he's going to be ahead of Golden when it's all said and done. But I mean, we see Golden creeping up. So it doesn't not make sense, when it's all said and done. I think that does make a lot of sense. But hey, we only have to wait a couple more days before this is before we find all this stuff out. Obviously, we'll have to wait a little bit longer for all the running backs and all those kind of takes. But we will find out about Tet and Golden and these QBs on day 1. In fact, not only will we find out about it, but Jeff DiMatteo and I will be doing a live stream on the Gridiron Ratings YouTube channel and on Twitter, covering the first round of the draft. We will be covering it live as it's happening, talking about all the picks, all the players. We're not just going to be talking about the fantasy players. We're going to be talking about the offensive lineman, defensive lineman, everything. We're going to talk about every single pick, and we will be doing that all Thursday night. So obviously, make sure you are liking and subscribing this channel, subscribing to the Gridiron Ratings channel, so that when we're going live for the Devy Devotional, for the live stream on Thursday, and then obviously any future streams coming from there. Aaron and Andy, I appreciate you guys being here. They will not be here for the live stream, but they will be here in spirit. Andy will be our boots on the ground, hopefully sober enough to give us some kind of report of what's going on while while he's out there. But we definitely can't make any promises with that. Let's see, Andy, because you're going to be in Green Bay at the draft, and I'm jealous. Why don't you give us some words of wisdom before we get out of here?
Why do you do this to me, man? I mean, don't don't take Luther Burden before Trey Harris in your rookie drafts.
Oh, man, that is some wisdom right there. And I did not. I took Luther Burden went before Trey Harris, but I did not take him. And I did take Trey Harris in my only rookie draft so far. And Hollywood is still in the chat. He's laughing about the sober enough comment here. And so Hollywood would love to hear that I also drafted Dylan Sampson. He came at the end of the second round, and so he is now a new part of my team as well. Love me some Dylan Sampson. I can't believe in my first rookie draft, I got me some Trey Harris and some Dylan Sampson. I'm sticking to the brand. But we appreciate you guys listening. We will be back in your ears next week. But for now, we're going to go ahead and cash out. I still don't have an outro, so we're just going to hit stop.